I would say that the majority of everything you see on YouTube or Facebook or any other social media site is fake. It's a show and it's a version of us that we want other people to see. And I just spent the last week on the best vacation I've ever taken. And today I want to talk about why I hate going on vacation. I want to walk through some real world problems. And I want to talk about changes I'm making to my YouTube channel and the way I do things. So to begin with, my wife's been wanting me to take her on a cruise for 20 years now, and we've never really been able to afford it. Last year, she took my daughter and her friend. They had a great time, and she put a down payment on a second cruise for this year that was for my son's graduation present. She's been making payments all year. We went on the cruise. It was the best time I've ever had on a vacation. I got to do all kinds of things that I've wanted to do forever, and I loved every minute of it. But I want to show you why I don't like taking vacations. And I guess, if you don't want to watch the whole video, the short answer is because I don't have all of my stuff together. And I personally feel like I have not earned the right to have a day where I don't work on something that matters. So I'm going to tell you a few stories to lead us up to that. I'm going to show you some of the footage from what we did on vacation. And then, like I've already said, I want to talk about the changes I'm making to make sure that this YouTube channel is not fake and it's not a highlight reel, that it's just real life. And most importantly, that every video provides some kind of value to you, at least every video after this one. So this is the dolphin excursion we went on in Costa Maya, Mexico. It was a phenomenal experience. The dolphins are incredible creatures. You get a lot of up-close, hands-on time with them, and they do tricks. And you're even able to ride one across the pool. They don't allow the GoPro camera to go down into the dolphin pool, so the only footage we have is looking down from overhead. Now I want to back up just a little bit and tell you about what happened the day before we left. There's been something wrong with my daughter's car. It's got some kind of an exhaust smell to it. It's got a couple different problems, but she's been driving it. It drives fine. I said, you know what? I'd rather she didn't drive her car while we're gone. I want her to drive my son's Jeep. And so the day before we leave, I drive his Jeep, and I was going to show her how to drive it. I go about 15 miles, and I notice that the oil pressure gauge is going down. So we got a problem here. I stop and check, and the oil's a little bit low. I put some oil in it, finish my trip, get back home, tell my son, go get an oil change. He takes it to a local shop, they do an oil change. Go through the rest of our day. We're planning, we're packing, we're getting everything ready. So at the end of the night, my son's taking his girlfriend home, almost midnight. He's on his way back from taking her home. We're going to bed, everything's set up and ready. Calls me. Said the Jeep's not running right, it started to smoke, I pulled off the road. So I drive over there, smell antifreeze as soon as I get there. The serpentine belt is wrapped all around this fan on the front of the Jeep, and there's antifreeze all over the inside of the engine. So I check, and one of the idlers is loose, the bolt. I can actually turn the bolt a little bit. So we make other arrangements, get my daughter some support, some backup plans for other ways for her to get around, depending on how her car performs. I take my trailer out there, get the Jeep home about 2:30 in the morning. We still leave at 6 in the morning for vacation. And we leave this mess. And then I get a call from my daughter. Her car won't start. We had made other arrangements, and we got all that taken care of. So she had something to drive, but I knew I was coming home to two cars that were broke down. But we don't want to let that ruin a good time. So we went out on a flat-bottom boat in Honduras to do some snorkeling, which has been something I've wanted to do my whole life. Looking here through the floor of the boat, it looks to me, sitting in the boat, like we're about 30 foot above the bottom. And the guide told us that at this point right here, we were about 150 foot deep water, and you could still see the bottom crystal clear. Now, I actually didn't get good footage of it, but we had a great view of a sunken ship that's just towards the top of the screen right now. And there were actually two that we saw that were sunk during a hurricane and left there. and they've become part of the new coral reef, which kind of had to be rebuilt after the hurricanes with some artificial reef. Now, once again, this water looks like it's not very deep, but you'll see a shot in a minute where I try to dive to the bottom, and I would estimate that it's 20 to 30 foot deep here. Now, I've got a little bit of a long story to tell about these cars, so I thought it might be more interesting to look at this underwater footage while I tell that story. So we got home from the vacation at 1 a.m. yesterday morning, got some sleep, come out first thing, I'm gonna fix the Jeep. But actually not first thing. I gotta take my daughter to work, come back to fix the Jeep, and my son has to be at a college orientation, so gotta take him there. While I'm taking him, I pick up a belt, 2 idlers, and 2 bolts. Come back, fix this, fill up the antifreeze, and as I'm pouring the antifreeze, it is shooting out the front of the radiator. This plastic top on the radiator is broken. Go buy a radiator. Now we're $300 into this little repair. Spent most of the day yesterday fixing this. Said now, my son's got school the next day. Before he drives to school, I want to take this for a test drive. So we jump in the car. This was late yesterday evening. I've been driving everyone around all day. Of course, my wife is in her car, but the kids, I'm driving them all over the place. So we go get some transmission fluid at Walmart. On the way back, car seems to be running fine. I'm not paying attention, really, because everything seems fine. And my son says, throttle's not responding. Well, what the heck is that? And he pulls over, and we got the low oil pressure again. I don't know how long it'd been reading low oil pressure, but we were just a few miles from home. Stopped the car, checked everything out, got in it, and drove home. By the time we got home, we had a ticking noise. And I've been doing my research on low oil pressure, and it's not good. So I started looking up all the possible causes. It's common for Jeeps to have a low oil pressure reading, but not really low oil. But we have a ticking noise, so we have low oil. And we got an oil change the day before we left. So there's a couple things that I'm going to try to do now, and I don't think they're going to work. I think this engine's shot. I believe the main bearings in the engine are bad, but what we're going to try to do is pull the oil pan and replace the oil pump and the rear main seal and put it back together. And that is a very intensive job that I've never done before. It's very difficult to get the oil pan out because of the exhaust and the front suspension parts. It's going to be an all-day job. It's going to cost, I've already went and bought all the parts, $250 more, and it's not going to fix this car. But we're going to do it anyway, out of due diligence. Also, I got a new oil filter that's a higher quality. They use kind of a cheap, generic oil filter. And I was reading that sometimes the bypass on those restricts flow. Then, we're going to put a thicker oil in it. It feels like a thin oil. And a lot of people in these older Jeeps, they use a Rotella 1540. So we're going to put Rotella 1540 in it. Thicker oil will maintain pressure better. We're also going to use Lucas Heavy Duty Oil Stabilizer. And we're going to change the oil pump. This morning, I started it up with it fully cooled off. It got oil pressure because it's not hot yet. And I ran some seafoam through it. The hope is that seafoam kind of breaks down some sludge in the engine, lets the oil flow better. I ran seafoam in it for 30 minutes or so till it started to warm up and lose oil pressure again. I shut it off. I've drained the oil. So the rest of my day will be spent trying to get that oil pan out. I'll let you know if I'm able to do it or not. It's a scary deal for me because some people really struggled with that. And if I get it apart but can't get it back together, can't get it all the way out, sometimes the oil pump doesn't fit right. It's a higher flow oil pump but not a higher pressure. But sometimes the increased flow will allow it to maintain that pressure up through the engine better. These are possible short-term fixes to keep this vehicle on the road, but it's not any fun. And as much as I love my vacation, I wish I mean, if my family doesn't watch my videos, if you guys are watching, I'm glad I went on vacation. But what I wish is I had the money from the vacation to pay to have this engine rebuilt. Pressure on your ears, like Gabe said, and there's my... So what you're seeing right now is a surfing simulator called the Flow Rider. And I'm playing it at 4 times speed. This is my son's first attempt at learning how to do the surf simulator. It's actually really difficult, even though he makes it look easy. We were in a group lesson with 8 people, and he was really the only person who mastered it within our paid time. So that was a shot of me not mastering it, and this is my son on his second go-round. Each person gets about 2 5-minute turns, and he really got the hang of it where he could steer and maneuver, and he even pulled off an intentional 180-degree spin. Now, if you watch me in a minute, you're going to see me take one of a couple hard falls I took where I injured my neck, and I'm really having trouble getting under the Jeep because of it. Now, what I thought was cool about this experience was the end of it for me, which was failing and failing and failing and failing, and then being ready to give up and being talked into trying it one more time and actually making it work. So this is my daughter's car, and we own both of these vehicles in cash, which is a good thing, but they're not the greatest vehicles. They're older, they need work, and this gives us a error code that said we need new catalytic converters, and we get an exhaust smell. So I bought some catalytic converters. I'm not sure if I'm capable of putting them on. I talked to a professional mechanic. He said he didn't think that was the problem. It uses quite a bit of oil, and then she said it didn't want to start. I think it may need a battery. And there was a cable that came off the starter a while back that has popped off again. And I had a thought on this too that is about believing in yourself and the things you can do. And a lot of times if someone's there to do something for you, you won't take the extra step and realize you can do it yourself. So my daughter called me. I told this story in another video that her car wouldn't start, and I came and there was a plug-in connector that provided power to her starter. I hadn't seen that before. It wasn't a wire nut with like a nut on a stud or something. It was a plug-in connector. It had come unplugged. I put it back on and she was able to drive. While we were on vacation, same thing happened. She got under the car, found the wire, and plugged it back in. She would have said she would never do something like that, but she did it because she needed to. But also, the other night, I had to jump start her car before we left on vacation. So, first thing I want to do is see if her driving it since the last time I was here, if it's used any oil. Make sure it has plenty of oil. And then she said there might be a problem with the brakes. So I want to check the oil. I think I'm going to take that plug and just put some electrical tape on to hold that in place. We'll see if the battery stayed up while it hasn't been driven. And then I'm going to have to drive it and check the brakes. That's a lot. And I'm no car mechanic. I have a history of working on equipment and fixing things, but that's nothing like having real knowledge and experience with automobiles, especially specific ones. So I'm just winging it. But if I took this older vehicle to a shop and said, here's 8 things that I needed fixed, it's not just like, oh, I can't afford to do that all the time. I literally probably wouldn't have enough money for the bill until I get paid again. And one thing I want to say when I talked about being real in videos, I also want to be cognizant of the fact there's a fine line between keeping it real, admitting that we're regular people who struggle with everyday things, as opposed to being dramatic. So let me know if I ever cross that line into dramatic. I'm talking more about not reviewing products that I don't really care about and things like that. But also telling you, like, man, I got all kinds of problems, and this is a couple of them. All right, I'm gonna try to summarize everything I've found on this. The car starts, so the battery's not completely dead. It may be weak. The starter cable, I pushed it back on, wrapped a little bit of electrical tape around where that mounts. Maybe that won't pop off anymore. I don't know if that's a great idea or not, but I don't see an easy way to take that off. Maybe I could kind of squeeze it closed where it stays tighter on there. She mentioned a problem with the brakes. We do not have low brake fluid. If there was a problem with a line leaking or like an imminent failure on the brakes, we would see it in the fluid. The fluid is not low. The car seems to stop itself just fine. I'm not sure why she feels it needs brakes, but it probably does. So we will plan on doing a brake job. But a brake job is not a major catastrophe that I have to be stressed about. It just needs to be done. The big problem is the smell of burnt oil, and I believe I found that, and I want to make a commentary about myself. It's just a critique of myself. Is I've been so focused on what I'm doing every day that sometimes I let things that are more important slide through the cracks, and I worry about things that are less important. So I should have been worried about this sooner and tried to do my due diligence rather than just say, when I get around to it, I'll take it to a mechanic. What I believe is wrong with this car is the valve cover gasket is bad. I'll get some video and show you that on one side of the engine, on the exhaust manifold, like heat shield, there is oil. On the other side, there isn't. I'm pretty sure that that side, that gasket's leaking. We're getting oil onto the exhaust. It's burning off. And that's why it's using oil, and that is why it smells. I hope that that's the problem. I'm going to start watching videos to find out if that's something I can do myself. It seems like maybe I could, but some of these late model cars are more complicated or harder to access, so I'm going to watch all the available videos about it. As far as me personally, it always comes to a conundrum on this that I feel like if I know how to do the job, I could make a better video than the ones that are out there because I'm a full-time video guy. But I don't feel like my audience necessarily cares to watch me fix this. So it's always a decision. Do I make a video about this? And I've thought about having just another channel that I don't pay much attention to. And when I want to record an important repair like this, record it and put it over there. Because I don't think my everyday audience, I just don't think, unless you have a Kia Sorento that's leaking oil, that you probably want to watch an extended video on that. So those are the things I think about with the YouTube channel. With the car, I feel like I know a lot more than I did. And we'll get a brake job scheduled. We will watch some videos and determine if I'm going to do this job myself. And now I've got to drive an hour there and back to pick my son up from school, and we'll move on to the next problem. Here's another situation that isn't ideal. We had a big windstorm 2 days after we left, and I'd imagine that's when these shingles blew off. And we've had a couple of rains since then. So, you know, if your house loses a shingle, you want to be here to fix it. I've talked about it before, but when you walk on our roof, it feels solid, and the shingles don't feel cupped or old, but every time there's a storm, it's only this side we lose shingles. And I supposedly there was 95-mile-an-hour wind on this storm. I said this keeps happening, but it doesn't happen in the same place. There's one over there, there's one down there, there's one right where the camera is, and there's two on the other side of the roof. And then we have 6 sections of roof that have never leaked, never lost a shingle. It's just this side right here, that wind comes in so hard it rips them off. And so what I've done, usually I replace the shingles and then I take a bunch of this tar, and every shingle that was loose, every shingle that was replaced, and every shingle next to it, I lift the flaps up and I put the tar in. And when the next storm comes, it's not the same shingles that come off, it's another spot. I had the insurance come look at the roof. They checked it out, said they didn't think there was a payable claim on this storm damage we've had. They said there's no signs of roof leaking into the attic. There's no water damage or anything like that. And they gave me a quote on getting the roof replaced. I can't justify that amount of money. It's too much. I just can't imagine paying that for a roof. And I guess what that means is probably in the next year I will put a roof on this side of the house myself. If not the whole thing, at least this side. It is what it is. Time to get back on the Jeep. Maybe vacations are for people who have good sound roofs on their house and have done preventive maintenance on their vehicles and everything works the way it should. Maybe guys like me should take short vacations that don't cost very much and don't last as long. It's about being diligent to take care of things before they become problems. We also did a bird walk. We got to hold sloths and monkeys, and we did a pretty intense ziplining course where they basically drive you straight up the side of a mountain, and then you do 13 zip lines coming down, and each of them is probably 100 yards long, and I really enjoyed that, as you see my son and then me coming in on a zip line. The day I've had on this Jeep has taken all the enthusiasm I had out of the video, but I talked at the beginning about just showing real life, and that's what we got right here is real life. And it sucks, and I got to figure out what to do about it. But we bought this Jeep for my son for Christmas. So he's had it 8 months. I think he's only put like 4,000 miles on it or less. He just doesn't drive very far to school. That was it. And the engine's shelled. I've got the oil pan off, and the connecting arms have a lot of slop on the crankshaft. And there's what looks like brass all over in the bottom of the oil pan. I'll show it to you. So I'm pretty sure that they probably saw those flakes in the oil, the glitter in the oil, and decided to sell the Jeep. This was probably a known issue when we bought it. We did get a good price on it. Now I've got to decide, we're gonna rebuild this, we're gonna have it rebuilt, we're gonna pull it ourselves, are we going to get a salvage yard engine, are we gonna buy a different Jeep? Looks like you could probably get a salvage engine for under $1,000 and maybe do it myself. Probably closer to $2,000 if I want to have this engine rebuilt, but obviously it depends on what they find inside the engine. If anything can be reused, if it has to be bored, any of that. I'm no mechanic, but I think I could take this engine out and put it back. I've got a cherry picker. I've got all kinds of equipment to lift with. I guess I need to go ahead and put it back together. I'm going to show you the flakes in the oil pan. So, it's taken all the enthusiasm I had because I just found this issue and realized we had a major problem. I told my son I was about 75% that when we took this apart it would be bad and we'd just be out of luck on it. But we went ahead and bought the parts, and we were hopeful that it just needed an oil pump. It's got me all bummed out now. I got to get this dealt with. He's got to go to school. His school's about 30 minutes from here, and he's living at home. And so I'll figure that out tomorrow. That process starts tomorrow. But I want to finish up what I had to say today. So My intention is to try to make sure every video I publish provides value to you guys, and that means maybe slowing down the pace that I publish at when needed. Not just make less videos just to do it, but if I'm doing a project that takes 3 days to do the whole project, in the past I was showing a third of a project on day 1, a third of a project on day 2, and a third of a project on day 3. And that feels like a waste of your time. Your time's valuable, and I appreciate you spending any of it with me. So what I'm thinking is, on those days, I need to spend 3 days doing the project and make that into one video. And maybe the next day's video is only takes 1 day to make, but I'll just have to see how it goes on that. But I want to make sure that I don't just throw content out there just for the sake of doing it. I also want to make sure that I'm being completely real with you guys and telling you what's on my mind, what kind of problems I'm having. And another one is, I want to try to make sure I don't take products that I don't believe in. It's very easy when someone offers you something that's worth a lot of money and you can have it for free. I want to make sure that I'm honest with the way I talk about things and do a better job of that. So this is kind of a bummer, and I've still got my daughter's car to deal with. And that's the other thing, is sometimes I'll have important things like this that need to be dealt with. I'll be like, yeah, but I make videos for a living. I need to make a video today. And I need to know when to shut that off, deal with the problem, and skip a day. So that's where my head's at with it. And I think I had a lot more to say, but it's gone now. I'm in a, it's just life. Like, we bought an old Jeep, so there could be things wrong with it. That's life. And a lot of people have bigger problems than one of their vehicles being broken down. But when it happens, you're going to be bummed out about it. And right now, I'm bummed out. So I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.